All right, hello guys. I'm here with Yat Siu, who's the chairman of Animoca, very well respected in the industry. How are you doing, Yat?
Very good, and it's great to see you again after really so many years. Actually, the last time we actually had a talk. Yeah.
Of course, if I can just say one guy who's been active in crypto through the bear and bull times is him. So yeah. But today, I do want to ask you more about a certain region that's been very, very hot when it comes to crypto, and that is no other than South Korea.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So
We love
first
South
and foremost, yeah, exactly. I know Animoca has been doing a lot of activations there already, but I would like to just understand what have you guys been doing there, and how do you see the overall market for crypto?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, Korea is a fascinating market. I mean, most of the youth basically own and trade crypto already. It probably has as a country, I think it's the single highest volume as a country around the world, or certainly top one or two in the world. One of the major activations that we did over there was with Mochaverse, with the Mocha token. We did a partnership with SKPlanet, which for those of you, of course, is largest loyalty platform connected to the largest telco in Korea as a way to bring people on chain. And so that's been quite successful with us. And the token is of course also available on major Korean exchanges such as Upbet and Bitdom and so forth. The other thing that we're also now pushing is education. So with Open Campus, we've been doing more outside of South Korea, but we're looking at South Korea as a market as well. Student loans is a big area that we're looking at as well, which is again a way to onboard people on chain. The dynamic that's a little bit different in Korea versus other parts of the world is that Korea doesn't have as much on-chain activity. And so what we're trying to do with things like Mochaverse and also on campus is how do we bring more of that activity on-chain? Right? A lot of the activity happens actually in the exchanges in Korea, which is different from other places around the world because of its particular flavor. But if you want to receive your airdrop reward on Mochaverse, if you want to receive some benefits, you kind of have to go on-chain. And then if you want, you can still, of course, work through the exchange. But that's basically sort of one area, I think, where Korea is different. But from an opportunity standpoint, Korea is, and I say this about Asia broadly, but Korea in particular, is a market that is very, very comfortable with trading, very comfortable with markets broadly, and very capitalist, right? And I think that's a distinction. Because you have other markets, say like Europe, where maybe population is bigger, but the reason why the trading volume is not high and activity is not higher is because Europeans, broadly speaking, aren't really that capital markets friendly. They don't think in the same capitalist way. They have an uneasy relationship with money. One of the funny things I find about Korea is that you're quite upfront about money. I mean, I'm not in the dating scene, so I don't really know, but I've heard stories that, it's very normal and not rude at all if people start asking about how much money you make when you're dating. Is that true?
That is true. Like us, let's just say status is very important.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Right? And that's not to say that you can't love someone, or that's not to say that it's wrong or right. It's just part of the culture, which means everyone's comfortable with that, right? You do this in America, you do this in Europe, you get canceled, right? You're like, what are you? So it's a completely different type of culture. And that is just an illustration of comfort with money, and the openness about money is the reason why, basically crypto and Web3 is just so popular in Korea.
Okay, yeah, I think you kind of nailed it when it comes to the landscape. So, with all the initiatives that you've been doing, right, it is very hard to bring people on chain. But what do you think works? Let's just say a newbie coming into crypto, they've been trading, but they want to do more. They want to get into Mochaverse and the community. What's like the smoothest way for them to get in?
Well, I mean, I think it's still very much related to certain kind of Web2 rails. Like, for instance, Mochaverse, you can still log in with an email as initial, but then you get the ID and then you can use that as well. So it's a way to begin to disintermediate that process. But I think the other one, of course, for on-chain, and most people don't talk about that because they've kind of forgotten about it, is gaming. So, so of our 572 portfolio companies, we have over 160 of them in gaming. So it's still a very, very huge focus. And gaming has been one of those most natural places for on-chain, right? Because if I want to trade the item, or if I want to show the proof of my NFT, or want to sort of do something inside the game, I have to do this on-chain. But the thing that a lot of people sometimes conflate is success of token price does not necessarily mean gaming adoption, right? So today we have almost 7 million daily active players in Web3 gaming, which is 7 times larger than 3 or 4 years ago. And it's much more used than AI, for instance, right? However, because of the market sort of dynamics and really the trading dynamic, the token is its own product. So you have something like 70 or 80% of the utility of the token come from trading, and 20% or 30% from the utility, right? Which means that the utility prices are the current token prices in the market are reflective of the utility, not of the trading value. And one of the things that we've come to realize, or at least appreciate, is that tokens in Web3, not just gaming, all tokens, are very much market pricing economic indicators as information in the same way that the stock market and the commodities market is, right? So in other words, if there's a major macro trend, so this is more altcoins than Bitcoin, right? Altcoins react to macro markets as sources of information. So, for instance, when Meta was Facebook became Meta, and it was COVID, all the metaverse tokens and gaming tokens were exploding, right? Was it because every person from Facebook started playing Sandbox? No, right? But from a narrative, from a market pricing information, there was value. People understood. That's exciting, right? Last year, AI tokens exploded. Why did AI tokens explode? Because of AI as a narrative, not because you have more people using AI tokens in Web3. Don't get me wrong. We're big believers in AI and Web3, and we think it's going to be major. But in relative terms, the attention came from that. So tokens are market pricing information. So gaming in the last 3 years has suffered from a macro perspective, right? But it's suffered. Most people don't realize gaming has not grown in the last 3 years, right? Everyone thought post-COVID gaming was going to keep growing. Not true. Gaming stayed flat, slightly declining. And there's another reason. Gaming has cost the same as it has 10 years ago. So that means that while the market is inflated, while there's more money in the system, actually the cost has gone up. Gaming hasn't, which is why gaming companies have struggled. That was over the last 3 years. This year is changing because of Nintendo Switch 2, the repricing with Mario Kart, and GTA 6. And that's going to basically change the market macro of gaming. And therefore, the gaming success in utility is already there, but the market pricing will come. So anyway, we're bullish on gaming. So that's an example of some of the trends that we like to see. But the other one that we like a lot is education. Pencil Finance, we just announced $10 million in loans for students who can basically get financing. Education is a really important thing. Also, once you get onboarded with the student loan, then you're for crypto for life, right? So you're on board. So these are some of the things that we do. This is our Open Campus EDU project.
Yeah, amazing. So yeah, I think these are really important narratives. I would like to ask you,
Yes.
what do you think is a hot narrative that's like brewing up right now, but not many people are still talking about yet?
Well, I just talked about gaming, right? So, and I would say, it's a classic thing, and talk to me 6 months later and see if I'm right or wrong. Okay. However, the classic thing is, when everyone's out, that's when you get in, right? And generally our strategy has been a lot around liquid tokens as well, right? So the big ones. While gaming was a hot narrative before, we think it's an underrated, under-discussed narrative. Yeah, there's a small core talking about it, but a lot of people are like, oh, gaming's not going to work, or they're not in space, or they're doing anything. And when did we actually capture some of our biggest returns? It was in 2018, 2019, when NFTs and gaming were completely ridiculed. Nobody was even talking about it, right? So that's one of the things where we think there's a major opportunity. The other area that we think is underrated is education. But education is a longer burn, right? It's something that's going to take more fundamental time. But I'll tell you why that's exciting. So student loan financing in the world is estimated to be about $3 trillion. $3 trillion. It's
More than Bitcoin.
it's huge, right?
Yeah.
US alone is 1.7 trillion. Right? Now, if you can move that student loan because of capital and finance people sort of on chain, cheaper, better, faster, which is one of the key core benefits of crypto on chain, then you move even just 10% of that on chain, you're already 3 times the TVL we have today. So, I mean, just like we're saying, oh, TVL is great on crypto. It's 100 billion. Okay, take 10% of student loans. That's 300 billion. Like you just look at those numbers and you go, it's still sort of the early days, right? And that's kind of why we're focusing on these other markets. Also, why we have a stablecoin initiative, with Standard Chartered in Hong Kong, which is a bank, and not just any bank, a note issuing bank, that's with a license from the HKMA, which is a central bank. All these initiatives together is a way in which we help mass onboard more people in the space. And again, education is something we're really bullish on, but it's more longer term. But when that hits, you're going to have hundreds of billions of dollars in the space, in a hurry.
Can you share more about how is a stablecoin different, let's say, from USDC or existing stablecoins?
Yeah, the Standard Chartered JV that we have is an HKMA license, which is basically central bank license. That's very different from USDC and USDT. Those are licensed in a different way. Now, the US is coming out with stablecoin regulations. Don't know how that's going to look like, so obviously it's going to put some clarity around that. But as a result, expect other banks to issue stablecoins. So this is a bank-issued stablecoin, right? Of which we're the JV partner, right? It's from Standard Chartered, right? And that actually is an area in which you create trust, because in Hong Kong, when you have money, it tells you issued by Standard Chartered, right? So people know that, and that's actually another thing. It's trust, right? Now, again, we know in the crypto industry that Tether and Circle are stable, reliable, own treasuries, all that kind of stuff. But you talk to someone who's never been in crypto, they're still a little doubtful about USDC and USDT, and just because they're not familiar with the technology. But who is the biggest agent of trust of our financial assets? It's a bank, right? So if a bank issues a stablecoin, I can be comfortable with it. There's insurance, there's a government behind it. Because the government's giving you a license, you're okay, right? And just to be clear, it's a stablecoin, it's not a CBDC. And so that's the main difference, and that's actually why we think more people will onboard at the beginning, because now they can do it through a bank.
Amazing, yeah. Give something a bit more familiar, right, to the normal users. So instead of having them to, get into this scary crypto territory.
Do it from the bank account directly.
That's true, yeah. Same UX.
Exactly, same UX. You're